Hey there guys, I am the Sixth Machine and welcome back to another Warhammer video. So it's been a long time since it left us, but I know a lot of us, myself included, do miss the old world of Warhammer Fantasy, and we are very eagerly awaiting the eventual release of the redone, reimagined, revamped version of the game, The Old World. And GW have been very slowly teasing us with bits of news and images and artwork and everything over the last probably year and a half, 2 years, I want to say. But it does seem like they are now making some genuinely very good progress, and they have done an update article this week saying things are well underway, designs are being made, playtesting is happening, the main rulebook is being written as we speak. So whilst the game is still probably quite a ways out, there are some definite good steps being made, and so from my perspective, my hype for this game is just building really high. But in the article from yesterday, they really did it just to give us a bit of an update and to show off a few new pieces of art, and I wanted to talk about it mainly because the art is genuinely gorgeous and I love it. I think it looks really amazing, and as I said, it is just building that hype for this new game for me so well. The first thing to cover is, of course, the updated map they've shown off. They do this whenever they do an old world article, just showing a few more of the faction sort of icons and crests and coat of arm kind of things. So I'm sure many of you will recognize this, if not from the original Warhammer Fantasy setting, then maybe from Warhammer Total War, which is very popular at the moment. They've added a few new crests apparently, with some Dwarven and Orc locations added to the map. And I'll be honest, I'm not super savvy on the lore of this particular time period. It is set, I believe, a good couple of 100 years before the classic Warhammer Fantasy setting. So obviously, loads of the human and mortal kingdoms will see potentially vast changes, new characters, new lore, new heroes, new units, all that kind of stuff. But you can still very clearly see those thematic stomping grounds for armies like Corone and Aquitaine for the Bretonnians, the Imperial factions in Reichland, and even the Kislev factions from a bit further north that they showed some artwork and designs for a good few months ago, but I think which are going to be heavily inspired by what we see now in Warhammer 3 Total War. So I do think in general it's fair to say that most of the factions, maybe not Lizardmen, but most of the factions that you have known and loved and maybe played from back in Warhammer Fantasy will be back in an updated, definitely changed and different, but hopefully at the core of it, somewhat similar form, just with some, brilliant new lore and characters and of course models to go with them. They also show off some specific army art with an Orc boar boy still looking pretty much as you would expect. I don't think the Orcs really change much over the centuries and years, except of course they get bigger as they grow and then eventually die. But I think as a race, as a species, they are probably going to be largely similar to how they were back in Warhammer Fantasy. I do hope personally, like this guy looks great. I think he looks brutal and menacing and sort of very orky. But for me personally, I hope they do keep some of the slightly more comical aspects to the army that I think have been lost in some ways in Age of Sigmar and 40k recently. Things like the snotling pump wagons, the doom divers, the fanatics, everything that gave the Orcs in Warhammer Fantasy that really zany, colourful, bright yellow and reds, all that sort of imagery that lets them, as a faction, bring some more fun and enjoyment and almost a lightheartedness back to the old world. Like, I don't want them to be a comedy faction, but I do really want to see some units that just portray that zany, crazy, wild aspect to the army, rather than just being all brutal and mean like this boar boy does. I'll also say one thing in here that I really do like is that classic round Orc shield is so reminiscent of the old monopose models that you could get for Orcs back in the day, which I'll put up on the screen now. Like, I love that bit of artwork. I know it's not in particular a callback, but for me that just brings up so much nostalgia of having those old monopose Orc models and those little shields that you stuck on to them. I just love it. It's such a great design choice, and I really do like it. We also get to see a Tomb King chariot, and yes, after over a decade since their last update, the Tomb Kings are finally getting some new models. It is in a different game system, sure, but let's give credit where it's due. The Tomb Kings are still there. They haven't been forgotten about. They haven't been buried under the sands of time, which everyone kind of assumed they did in the move from Warhammer Fantasy to Age of Sigmar. Yes, you could argue the what they called the Skeleton Boys in Age of Sigmar that I cannot remember the name of. They're reminiscent of the Tomb Kings, but they're not exactly the same. So it's really good, or it's going to be really good, to see some redone, updated Tomb King models, I think. I do like that they still mention this faction is under the rule of Cetra. Obviously, he is an undead, so he doesn't age and die. So it makes sense that characters like his, as well as, you know, other undead characters. I believe it's mentioned the Von Carsteins will have an appearance. Other demons, maybe even some of the older elves will still have some kind of presence in the old world, even if it's just in the lore. So if Cetra does end up leading the new Tomb Kings with a stunning new model, maybe even some new or expanded lore to get some more depth on him, I do think that these guys could genuinely be one of the most popular factions in the game, because everyone loved the Tomb Kings. They just never got the love from GW that people wanted them to get. So if they do end up getting, you know, a new book, new rules, new models, new characters, new lore, I do think that people are going to love it. And then finally, we've got a faction that I have only ever played once. I played it. It was my first game of Warhammer Fantasy. I think it was 4th edition. It was the edition where Bretonnians and Lizardmen had the box set. And it's the first game of Fantasy I ever played. And I went into a GW store and I took control of 5 Knights of the Realm or Knights Errant. I don't know which it was. But I took control of 5 of them and I charged them into a unit of Dragon Ogres. And I did nothing. And then I got wiped out on the return swings. And that was my first experience of Warhammer Fantasy. And I still remember it to this day. I was like 9 or 10 maybe. But yeah, I love Bretonnia. But they have a few pieces of artwork for them. They're showing off the humble peasant, which, you know, is a peasant. He looks pretty good, but as you would expect. What I think is more impressive and what I think is genuinely gorgeous is this Knight of the Realm. Still in that full stunning livery and armor, you know, with the house crests and the barding. It is just a gorgeous piece of artwork, and I do absolutely love it. I'm personally so glad that they've decided to keep this classic style for the Bretonnians, and they haven't gone for, I think, what they did in Age of Sigmar. Their tactic there was to sort of change things up and really make things their own style and design and unique look so that they could, you know, protect their IP a bit more and have a bit more of a definitive and secure different quote unquote set of factions compared to classic sort of fantasy tropes. But this is just a classic knight that you would see from, you know, history books or stories or films. It's so stereotypical, but that's what I love about it. This is a Bretonnian knight through and through. And if the models are on the same level of detail and quality that we see in Age of Sigmar with things like the recent Blood Knights, then a redone mounted Bretonnian force is going to be one of the most colourful, impressive, imposing, just gorgeous things that I think we will ever see on the battlefield. And I am really, really excited to see just how good the quality of the designs are and just how sort of colourful and unique all the heraldry can be on them. So that is it for today. A few stunning pieces of artwork, as well as a little bit of an update on how the progression of the game design is going. But I have to say, as they release these every few months, it just makes me more and more and more hyped for the old world. I've been wanting fantasy back ever since they killed it off, unfortunately, back in, 2016 was it? And all of this that they are showing off, all they are talking about, as well as everything that we've seen in Warhammer 3 Total War, which I do think has got a definite impact and sort of link to what we will eventually see in the old world, is all looking to be steps in very much the right direction for me. But as always, what do you think? What do you think of these designs, and what other factions would you like to see some new updated artwork for? Let me know down in the comments below, and as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me, but until next time, I'll catch you later, guys.